welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast, recorded at night. Work that one out. I am your host, Kris, and I'm joined as usual by Danny. Good evening, Danny.
Ahoy, ahoy, it is breakfast time in Australia.
That's a good out. I like that. Good thinking, Batman.
Yes.
Delighted to be joined by another new guest this evening. I'm sure many of you will know who this is, but if you don't, I shall introduce him. It's Mr. Simon Collins. Good evening, Simon.
Hi, you right, Kris?
I am good, my friend. I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Very good.
Good stuff. Before we get into our content this week, Simon, do you want to just tell our listeners, for those of you that don't know who you are, just a bit about yourself and what you do?
I work as a sports journalist for a company called Haters, which is a press agency. Mainly covering Premier League football, mainly sort of clubs in the Midlands, a bit of Arsenal, and as you guys probably know, do a bit of podcasting with you guys for ABW. So yeah, that's mainly it.
And a bit of blogging as well. Don't
and a bit of blogging as well. Yeah.
You do your own podcast.
Dabble in it from time to time.
Yeah, it's very good. It's one of my favourites. It's like the Guardian pod light, 'cause it's not very long.
It's multi-talent, you see. We only get the best guests here.
Can you draw with your feet? That's what everyone wants to know.
No, not yet.
We thought you were supremely talented.
I'm working on it.
We only get the best here at the Football Hipsters podcast. Right, let's get into it then. We're going to start in reverse order, work our way through today's English games, and then work our way back to yesterday. So, a couple of Premier League games today. I think it's fair to say they weren't two of the most thrilling games you'll ever see in a calendar year. Danny, what did you make of the Stoke Arsenal game today? I mean, it was bitty, it was hard fought, it was, let's be honest, lacking in quality, wasn't it?
Oh, it's horrendous. It was terrible. As a neutral, it's probably quite interesting because the number of combined of shots of 22 shots, which was quite good, and there was a very even game apart from probably the last 15-20 minutes when it was the vast majority of it was either at the halfway third or is in the Stoke defending third, and the weather didn't help it very much. The weather, I just watched catching up on Match of the Day, and the weather has made so many people were using the weather to their advantage and having pot shots, and they were going in, and the balls were going in off of other defenders and other players, and yeah, it's just that time of year, and it's freezing cold. Pitches are real poor quality, like in the Stoke game. In the corner flag, it looked like a ploughed field. And Arsenal weren't at their full strength. I mean, you take the players of the quality of Ozil and Sanchez out of any team, if they had them as their best players, and then they're going to struggle. Walcott was very off form. Chamberlain tried hard going through the middle behind Giroud, swapping places occasionally with Ramsey. Campbell was probably, for me, the best Arsenal player other than Cech. Cech probably saved Arsenal's skin 3, 4, 5 times with fantastic clearances, blocks and saves. And the other interesting thing was Jack Butland. Oh, he's only about 12 and he's one hell of a goalkeeper already. Anybody who signs him, one of the big teams sign him, he'll be your number one for 10, 15 years. He's that good.
Yeah.
Love him. He's brilliant.
Yeah, so good points there. Simon, what did you make of it sort of from a perspective of sort of with your job and that? What kind of highlights, if any, could you pick out for a match report?
I think Stoke were probably just about the better side. I think Arsenal, without Coquelin, Cazorla, no Ozil, no Sanchez, you look at that team they put out, I think Wenger would have been quite happy with a point at the start of it. I think the frustration was not winning that game in Liverpool in midweek, which would have meant a point against Stoke wouldn't have been a bad result. But as Danny says, it was highlighted in the summer that Cech would win Arsenal 10 to 15 points, John Terry was saying when they signed him. And I think today sort of showed, the examples of what he can do when he's on form. I mean, he made 2 or 3 great saves. And in front of him, I think Monreal was superb again. And Flamini as well, for the amount of stick he gets. I think the job he did in that midfield today is trying to hold the fort and stem the flow was impressive. So I think a point's not a bad result for Arsenal. They stay top of the league, and the players coming back, Sanchez, Ozil, Coquelin, when they get those back in, I think they'll look back on these sort of 4 or 5 weeks without them and say, if you'd said to us at the start of this run without those players that we'd still be top of the league, I think Wenger and a lot of Arsenal fans would have taken that. So I think it's all pretty good for Arsenal at the moment.
Yeah, it's something to build on, certainly baby steps. 2 big away fixtures in the space of 4 days. Transitioning into Liverpool Man United then. Danny, I doubt whether you saw much of this one, so I'll stick with Simon. Um, two traditional heavyweights, two of the largest clubs in English football. Coming into this game, was it 6th and 9th respectively? It was painful at best at times. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, I mean, it was both the games were was pretty terrible. Wasn't much for a Super Sunday, really. I mean, Liverpool will feel aggrieved, and Jurgen Klopp will feel disappointed that they didn't win because they were the better side. They had the best chances, but like Czech was for Arsenal, De Gea was superb. And United got the goal with Wayne Rooney at the end, and for Van Gaal, I think it was a big reprieve because all this week we've always had the stuff going on with him referring to a journalist as fat man, the talk of him still being under pressure for his job. And I think if he hadn't won today, or certainly if he'd lost, I mean, the calls for him to be sacked would have been pretty high. So I think for him, I mean, Klopp obviously would have wanted to win it, especially after the Arsenal game, the momentum built there. But I think for Van Gaal, winning that was absolutely massive, and it will buy him some more time. Maybe not masses of it, but certainly another month or so, you'd presume. And it's the way United have played this season. They haven't really been an expansive side since Alex Ferguson left, so it's no surprise that the game played out like that. But it was, hardly a riveting game, to say the least.
No, what do you make of both sides? I mean, Klopp obviously is slowly but surely. He's not got a lot to work with. Let's be honest. He's trying to put his stamp on some fairly average players for Liverpool. But what do you make of both sides? Is it a season that they'll just both want to kind of get out of the way quickly and rebuild in the summer?
Yeah, I think with Klopp, he's almost because of his mannerisms and the way he is, he's almost sort of flattering to deceive to an extent with the way he is on the touchline. He's so charismatic, and if you actually look at the results and how they're doing, like you say, they were ninth going into this game. They haven't actually done that well since he's taken over, and admittedly, obviously, the squad of players he's got has got the same failings that they had under Brendan Rodgers, and it's not a great squad, and it will need a great overhauling. And I think he said the aim is to win the Premier League title within 5 years, and that's a realistic aim. I think it would take that long to get Liverpool up there, certainly with the likes of Arsenal, Manchester City. And as for United, yeah, it'll be a season that they'll just want to move on from. But when they've spent that amount of money, and Van Gaal had that first season where he got them into the top four, they would have expected to, be going for the league this year. But it just hasn't worked out. And I think the sense seems to be that with Van Gaal retiring in 18 months, that they'll stick with him and until the end of that contract and then look for someone else. But with Guardiola, I think it's quite a bizarre decision to take. But I think that'll be the case. They'll stick with Van Gaal and move forward going from there. But I mean, for United fans, it must be painful watching them because they are absolutely boring and diabolical to watch. But I don't know what you two think of Van Gaal and whether he'll be keeping those extra 18 months or whether United will just give him the boot.
Danny, what do you think?
Well, I think they'd probably be better off. He's going to give you a kind of steady ship. He's not going to do anything other than what's written on the box. Is he? If he was a cereal, he would be Weetabix. Nothing fantastic, but he's going to keep you probably in the Champions League or maybe the playoffs, the Europa League positions. But then if he knows he's going to retire, and he's been talking about retiring, and he knows things aren't working at the club, then I think that he may go end of the season. That they might try and get somebody in. But I read a thing the other day saying that Guardiola was thinking he's going to have a season off, so he'll be back doing English football in 2 seasons. So it'd be a season and a half's time. So whether he does that or not, because then I don't think if Man City want him, that means they've got to get rid of Pellegrini, and it's going to cost them a fortune to get rid of him. And I know Chelsea would quite like him, and I know Man United would quite like him. But those managers are on quite a bit of money, but I suppose they're so rich it doesn't really make any difference. But the manager I feel sorry for is poor old Jurgen, who's been a bit of a Dortmund follower. I love Jurgen, but having to play Kolo Touré at the back when Kolo should be on a saga holiday somewhere, topping up his tan, that's not good because Kolo looks terrible. Sarko doesn't look much better, but I think they're two massive clubs in. in the process of rebuilding, and that's when clubs like Leicester can come up through and get up to the top, and maybe even Spurs are going to be taking those positions because everything is in turmoil at the moment in the Premier League, and teams like Arsenal should be making more of this with a settled squad, settled manager, settled stadium, and everything should be in place for them to be quite dominant for the next few years. But whether they are or not, because Man City, they could always just go and buy whatever they want to make their lives easier. But I think this time next year, Man United and Liverpool, Man United won't have Van Gaal as manager. I think they'll probably go for a change in the summer. I mean, I know a lot of the fans would like Giggs to be manager, but I think he showed last time that he was manager that he's not really as brilliant as some people want. Like when Shearer was manager of Newcastle, that didn't work out well either, did it? Sometimes legends should just stay legends.
Yeah, I agree. And there's obviously a lot of the pundits are speaking up against Van Gaal, but not many of them have got a solution. So we shall see what happens there. You mentioned in your chat there Leicester City. Simon, am I right in saying you were at Villa Park yesterday for their?
I was at Villa Park yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, talk us through that. You made some points to us personally that the atmosphere was brilliant at Villa, and that there was a real sort of sense of getting behind the team. Do you think that's kind of come about because of how bad it got last week in the FA Cup game? Do you think it's almost a siege mentality now, or do you think it's just purely because they've started really trying?
I mean, I think that. I mean that last week, the Wickham game. I mean, it was about as toxic as you could get it. I think. I mean, people there were saying that the way the Adams Park Wickham ground works is basically there's only sort of one road in and one road out. And the Wickham sort of steward said to the Villa team, look, wait a bit because otherwise you're just going to come out and you'll be stuck on the bus in traffic. You won't be able to get out. So they obviously delayed it. But after everything that went on with the stuff on the bench with Les Scott apparently sort of spitting gum with Brad Guzan onto the pitch and the fans kicking off, the fans still waited and the abuse they were giving to the players and to Remy Gard as they were getting on board. I think that's been a turning point for Villa. And I think they seem to have, from the outside anyway, seem to have pulled together and thought, we've got to do this. We've got to go and have a full go. If we give their all, which they did against Crystal Palace and they did against Leicester, I think the fans will be fine. It's the same with Newcastle, that all they want is for the players to appear to be showing and giving their all, giving some heart. And to be fair, they should have beaten Leicester yesterday after Mahrez missed that penalty. Leicester's were rocked a bit, and I mean the second half, Villa were all over them. Should have had a penalty with Robert Huth basically body slamming Kozak to the ground. And if it had gone on for another 10 minutes, you probably would have fancied Villa to get it. But it is a great ground, Villa Park. It's one of the old grounds, and the fans there are incredibly loyal. And I think, though, they've just left it a little too late to stay up. I think it's a bit too much for a mountain to climb.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. It just seemed to have picked up some momentum, but not quite enough yesterday. A win was pivotal for them, or important for them. Danny, what do you make of Leicester? I mean, we looked at the result for Arsenal today, and we'll come on to Manchester City in a minute, but they would have surely been looking at Villa Park thinking we should be getting a win out of this. And at 1-0 up, they had chances to go 2-0, most notably the Mahrez penalty. Do you think they'll look back on this with a tinge of disappointment?
Yeah, especially the way Mahrez took the penalty. He kind of aimed for the centre of the goalkeeper's body. And, if the goalkeeper's going to stand up, he's going to go left, right or stand up. So you've got a 33% chance of him hitting him in the body. So, like with the some of the recent penalty, like the goal where Firmino scored against Arsenal, you go top corner. If you've got the skill, you can go top corner. Then no goalkeeper's going to save it ever. But he didn't, and it looked like just stroll up, have a little bit of a kick, and yeah, it's a shame that shame for Leicester that he didn't score the goal, and I think that some people are quite annoyed about the way that he took the penalty. I know Match of the Day weren't overly pleased about that, but then luckily the Okazaki, I think he's got 5 goals in his last 5 games in all competitions. But the worrying thing is Jamie Vardy now. He's not scoring like he was. I'm just counting here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row that he hasn't scored in. So that they're really relying on like 2 or 3 star players. If Mahrez has missed a penalty, Vardy isn't scoring, and then you've got the little bloke from Caen in midfield. Whose name is Nakata? Kante. There you go. I know there's a K in it. Yeah, he was a bit quiet as well. But yeah, they're showing. I would have thought that more of Inler this season as well. I don't think we've seen much of him, but I think that they're one of the most other important players is Drinkwater. I think he's been brilliant, and as well the goalkeeper. So as long as a handful of those can keep on playing the way they've been playing all season, the more and more people saying, "Oh no, it'll all be over for Leicester by Christmas," and it's now middle of January, and they're still second in the league, and they've got what is it, third, so they're 7 points ahead of Man United in fifth. So that's like they've got to lose 3 games in a row to then not be in the Champions League positions. So the longer it goes, the more I think, bloody hell, this could be brilliant for a team like Leicester to end up in the Champions League or even the pre-qualifiers or the qualifiers. It would be good, but they do need to get a little bit of form. Just looking in their recent form of both the Premier League and the Cups, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. They've only won one, and that was the return leg. No, the Premier League game at Spurs. But I got a feeling that when Spurs go to Leicester in the FA Cup, Leicester will win that. So yeah, that'd be good for them. Then they've got 3 home games in a row, which should be good. But they're playing Spurs, Stoke and Liverpool, so they're not exactly playing easy teams. So they've got a hell of a run. Then after that, they've got Man City and Arsenal. So I think that'll be the period where they'll tell whether they're going to be contenders for a Champions League spot or fall away and end up maybe in the Europa League spots.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
Be interested to see what if anything else they do in the market as well in the coming weeks. Whether their owners sort of think this is a real chance and maybe bring in a couple more. And I think Ranieri said that there won't be any more movement. But
I think there was because Ranieri said we're not going to sign anyone else, and then he came out and said, I don't want to lie to you about anything. And then the Danish Stock Exchange said that they were selling a player called Daniel Amati from a club Copenhagen who can play sort of centre mid and centre back. They said that they've agreed to deal to sell him to Leicester, so I think that might go through this week.
Is that what they want at the moment, or do they need more goals? Because he isn't scoring, and he's your main
man.
The
difficulty with Leicester is obviously they got Andre Kramaric, who they signed this time last year, was a club record signing, £9 million,
Croatian, wasn't he?
Yeah, nine club record signing, £9 million.
Has he been injured?
No, he just can't get in the team, and I think Ranieri says he'll get rid of him because he has Joao Okazaki and Vardy as the 3 that he likes to use. And sometimes he likes to, like he did yesterday, he'll take one of the strikers off and play Mahrez off the front man. So I don't think they'll get another striker. And I think this Amati, I haven't seen much of him playing over in Copenhagen, but I think he's about sort of 21 years old, can play midfield, similar to sort of Kante and I think sort of box to box and all action style. So perhaps it might mean Inler can go out because his agent was moaning about that he was looking for a loan move because I think he was promised to be in the first team. And I think Ranieri had that idea when he signed him, but didn't quite realise how good Drinkwater or Andy King, who was very good at the start of the season, would be as well. So
be interested to see whether they do push on or not because their story just goes on and on and on. To be honest, what about Manchester City then? Danny, I'll start with you now. On paper, it looked like a fairly routine victory, and with Crystal Palace's away record, you're never quite sure, but it was fairly straightforward. Do you think it's the away form that they need to get right now? I mean, obviously they're still in the title race, they're still one of the top 3, but when they go away from home, they can't seem to get it right. So, what do you make of them at the moment?
It is quite weird. I mean, if you take any of more than a couple out of their spine of Joe Hart, Company, Yaya and Aguero, if you take more than a couple of those out of that, then they always seem to struggle. They do have other players in, but they've got Dimichelis and they've got the other, is it Otamendi?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other centre back. It does make you worry that a team with so much money have only really got one decent centre back playing, and I mean Dimichelis has been terrible at times. But just looking at their away record here, I suppose I should look at the Premier League, not all competitions, and that is their first win since the last time they had a away win in the Premier League was the 12th of September.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not good. They've lost to Spurs and drew with Man United and Villa, lost to Stoke and Arsenal, drew with Leicester, and then Watford. That's their first win. You don't expect that from a team that is meant to be pushing for the Premier League title. Before that, they had 5 wins in a row, and before that, they had 4 losses in a row, going back to March 2015. It's got to be the people who own the club must be wondering why they're having such bad form like that. But they were quite impressive. Well, they're very impressive. That's Crystal Palace's 5th loss in a row, I think. Match of the Day had a little bit that flashed up. I didn't see what year the last time they had such a bad run was. And Hennessy has come under a bit of stick because that's now a couple of errors he's had in 2 consecutive games. But Aguero was just, it could be one of the... Imagine him playing in La Liga. He'd probably get 50, 60 goals a season in all competitions at least. He's just unbelievable. And to show the quality of the man, he's on his hat-trick, and then Silva comes through the middle. So he gives the ball to Silva, and Silva scores his first goal since he's come back. And that's just such a gentlemanly thing to do. How many of if you put Aguero up there with the likes of Suarez, Ronaldo, and Messi, how many of those would have laid the ball off one of their mates on the verge of a hat-trick? You saw today when Ronaldo was playing for Real Madrid and he missed the ball for the hat-trick after about half an hour. He wasn't happy.
No.
And I thought Fabian Delph was brilliant for them as well. It's nice to see that a different type of midfielder. He's no Yaya, and he's no like the 2 Fernandinhos or Dininho, which are the 2 of them the same. He's not really got much time there, but it seems when he played today, he got an Opta rating of 9.7 and a goal, and he looked really good. So kind of kept the form that he has that got him into the England squad. Yeah, so they've got so much promise there, and plus the likes of De Bruyne, who's got 11 goals and 11 assists this season. He's absolutely brilliant. So I just think they're missing. Like today, they've only got 2 of their main 4 players playing. But if they get all 4 of those fit and then they get on a run, I think they're unstoppable. I don't think anybody can beat them.
Yeah, they seem weird with their signings. They do seem to sign such brilliant forward players, and they're not such great defenders. But we shall see how that works out. Simon, what do you make of Palace? I mean, I don't know whether you've been able to cover them recently, but I know Alan Pardew was saying that he's looking for a striker. There's a lot of talk of Adebayor, because I think, is it right to say they haven't scored in 4, maybe 5 games now? They strike me as a side that, I wouldn't say they're overachieving, but they're right on the edge of being sort of top 6, top 7. Yet at the moment they sit 8th and falling with 3 straight defeats. Do you think they're just a striker away from getting back on a good run?
Yeah, I think they are a very, very good side. I mean, we saw at the start of the season, certainly when they had Kabay going, and then the options they've got of that 3 behind the front man, where they've been having that problem up front. But the 3 they have behind it, when Sacco they got in, and Punchin's obviously there, and Zaha and Balassi. I think all they're crying out for is almost someone like an Adebayor, someone they can have in the box to get the ball out wide and get it in there too. Because at the moment, Dwight Gale doesn't seem to be Alan Pardew's cup of tea. Connor Wickham hasn't really hit the ground since they've signed him in the summer. I mean, the one you would have thought would have been perhaps Charlie Austin for them. Maybe he's not quite mobile enough to play in the way that Pardew likes with his attacking players. But you'd think with that sort of service, if he's got Balassi and Zaha out wide and Kabay behind him, you think someone like Charlie Austin would score bags of goals for them. That was when I was a bit surprised. And for £4 million, you think it'd be worth a punt. Obviously, they had Bamford on loan from Chelsea. That didn't really work out. So, I mean, I think that is the main issue is getting a striker in, whether they can. I mean, I think the one, if someone's going to gamble out of that lot, the sort of Crystal Palace who'd like a striker, Tottenham who'd like a striker, Stoke could perhaps do one as well. I think Berahino will be the one that someone takes a punt on, that either Stoke or Palace think, we're 5 or 6 points off the top 4. Let's gamble on, say, a 15, 20 million pound striker and see if we can make it. And if we don't, the new TV money, it's not a big loss. So I think that'll be the debate that will come near the end of the window. And either Stoke or Palace will go big for a striker. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, how much?
See Shamak today looking like a drowned rat.
Oh, bless him! Yeah, I think the commentator even said he was absolutely covered in sweat before he'd even run or something.
He's got 7 goals.
It's a horrible dive as well.
Yeah,
he doesn't look happy. I mean, they've got to be so depressed with him. He's just terrible.
It's not really worked out for him yet, has it? But, just on the Berahino talk, Simon, what sort of money do you think would take to get him out of West Brom? Because you mentioned Charlie Austin. He's gone for what I can only describe as a lot less than most people would have thought he would have gone for. Certainly
he was on
a year ago.
in the summer, though, wasn't he?
That's true. That would have knocked his value down. But Berahino was linked with a big money move to Spurs in the last window, and he didn't go, and he's hardly played since. You can only imagine his value's decreased since then. So, do you think West Brom would let him go for sort of under 10 million, for example?
No way. I don't think. I mean, I think it's difficult because I personally don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to know. But I think Pulis would have been quite open to selling him in the summer. I think, and maybe West Brom would have been, but just earlier in the window. But I think they'd set their price, at sort of £30 million, and
Wow.
Tottenham didn't get there with several bids. I think the highest Tottenham got was over 20 million. I think, and because he's a 21-year-old striker, English, and obviously that increases the value. He's not on a massive wage. They're sort of £20,000 a week, something like that. And I think if they were going to sell him now, I still think West Brom would be wanting near £20 million. I think because they'll argue the potential's there. He scored goals before, scored goals for the under-21s for England. So, and he's still got time left on his contract. I think 18 months or so he's got left to run. So, if West Brom were going to sell in this window, I still think they'd hope for £20 million or so. Or someone like Tottenham might hope they can use someone like Andros Townsend in a make weight and get the fee down. But like you say, the fact he hasn't been playing and Pulis hasn't really got him in the side has affected his value for sure. Because if he had been banging goals in, his value would have almost gone up if at least not stayed the same. So yeah,
Seems a huge amount of money, doesn't it,
yeah.
for a striker that's
But I
not
think
really.
that value's determined by potential, not necessarily current ability. Whereas Charlie Austin, I know we say it is very cheap, but he is sort of 28, 6 months left in his contract, history of injuries. You can but that's a sensible price. I mean, Berahino is probably worth, I'd say, 15 to 10 million pounds. So like 15 million pounds would probably be a fair sort of price, but.
Yeah, 15 is probably, I would say, what I would imagine seeing. But like you say, it depends who West Brom want, because I'm sure they're going to want to replace him if they let him go. Let's move gears then to kind of a mid-table. Who'd have said that a while ago? Clash between Chelsea and Everton. Danny, what do you make of Chelsea since Goose Hiddink has come back in? I think it's something that people have overlooked a lot, but when Goose Hiddink came in before with Chelsea, it was a number of years ago. I don't know actually how many was it, 4 or 5 years ago now. And people have talked about how Van Gaal's not worked at United, in that his olden days style is outdated now. And I wonder if Chelsea are experiencing the same with Hiddink, in that he's clearly a nice bloke, and he was very honest. He certainly showed that in his evaluation after the game. But do you think maybe his methods are not quite right for Chelsea? I mean, even if it's still the end of the season, because they're not really kicking on, are they?
I think he's just come in. I mean, the last time he was there was February 2009, and then he left in the summer. I think he won the FA Cup during that time. But I think one thing that has been shown is that the players were deliberately not playing for Mourinho. That was a conspiracy that's what they were doing, but it's obvious that they were, because they haven't lost a single game yet. And although they're defensive, not as defending as well as they could do, they've let in 5 goals in the last 2 games. And I think John Terry is almost past it. Just a fluke that he got a goal yesterday, and the way that he almost jumped up in the air and backheeled into the net like the last like a spring lamb. But they've got a few players there that aren't good enough. They've got a few players that aren't working. I mean, you look at the likes of Diego Costa. I don't think he's that brilliant. And although he has got 7 goals in 18 games this season, you never really get the feeling. I mean, he did well against Arsenal with his boxing gloves on, but I don't ever get the feeling, oh, watch out, he's going to score against you. And Falcao, that's just been another disastrous season for him. And then you got Loic Remy, who is just the forgotten man, because he's probably regretting his move there. Then you got the big money moves in the summer, like you had Pedro. That's another one that hasn't worked out. And the most amazing thing about Chelsea, that Eden Hazard hasn't scored a single goal this season. I mean, how is that even possible? And Fabregas's only got 1 all season, but they are a team that I think he's gelled them together, and he's probably got Terry and a few other of the ones that were the important players to have on your side behind him. But yeah, like you were saying, that they're not really on a fantastic run. You'd have thought by now that if it would have been just the fact that they all hated Mourinho, that they would have had been shooting up the table. But they're not. They're still 14th. I don't know whether that shows they were so far behind in the first place. But yeah, their next game is away at Arsenal next Sunday, so I think that would be a tough game, and a sign of whether they're actually improving under Gus, or whether he's just there to coast them to safety until the end of the season, when they pay an absolute fortune for another manager that will be rushed to do the job and spend an absolute fortune while he's doing it.
Yeah, as Arsenal fans, I hate to say this, but you wonder if it might take a big fixture like next weekend for them to kick into gear. I kind of hope not, if I'm honest. Simon, you got some latest update? Diego Costa was helped off the field yesterday with a shin injury. What's the latest on that one?
Yeah, it seems to be widely reported that he's might have fractured his tibia, which means he would be out of the Arsenal game. Which, considering he's got 5 goals since Gus Hiddink came in, he had 4 all season before. He is actually improved under Hiddink, and having been at the West Brom game in midweek, he did look much sharper and did look better. But I think the main thing that will affect is if he does have that injury, whether Chelsea would be willing to let Loic Remy go out on loan, as a number of Premier League clubs would like to take him. That move might get cancelled, and as a lot of other places reporting that Chelsea have had talks with Pato, it might accelerate a move for that. So I think the news regarding Costa will be quite important for the transfer window, if not necessarily just Arsenal's game next week against Chelsea.
Yeah.
Corinthians have recalled Pato from loan at Sao Paulo because they spent an absolute fortune as a Brazilian supermarket were paying Pato's wages, and so he had a couple of seasons at Corinthians, didn't really do much, loaned out to Sao Paulo for 2 seasons. Meanwhile, the price tag has gone from 30 to 25 to 15, and now they're probably getting for close to 10 million.
I've never seen much of him. I know he was very hyped when he came over to AC Milan, but I don't know how good he is now, and whether, I mean, it seems to be a lot of him being touted about and linked with all these clubs, rather than you hear clubs being like fighting over him. That seems to be the feeling anyway. I don't get the impression that there's a big queue for him, but maybe someone will come from him.
The fact that they've Corinthians that Wagner Love's sold to Monaco, I think he was Corinthians as well. So it's interesting that they seem to be.
A couple of players have gone to China.
Yeah, getting rid of like all their strikers. It's very bizarre.
Yeah. There seems to be that China's where the big money. There was talk of Loic Remy as well.
And
Cheick
Tiote, yeah.
I think he should be going there. Apparently, it seems for Paulinho from Spurs went there in the summer, didn't he?
Yeah.
There is big money there, so
be one to watch.
Yeah.
Another just touching on Everton with you there, Simon. What do you make of them? Do you think that if Roberto Martinez, God bless him, his teams play lovely football and they're easy on the eye, and he's very suave and sophisticated in his dealings with the media, as you may have come into contact with him before, but his sides just can't seem to defend, and Everton is it the second time this season they've conceded in the 98th minute, and over celebrating apparently is a reason, which that rule to me seems complete mad, but we'll leave that aside. What do you make of Everton, and do you think that Martinez has to change his style if Everton are to progress up the league?
Yeah, I mean it's very painful watching Everton, because I've seen him a few times and they are an absolutely fantastic team to watch, and when they're those Fab Four, they've sort of been dubbed of, Deulofeu, Barkley, Lukaku, and Morales, and they're like, when they're all going and all firing, they are fantastic. And Deulofeu in particular, I think, is a brilliant player. And Barcelona have got a first option clause on him, and you'd be surprised if in a year's time they don't think, look, let's get him back here. But they are defensively, it's a bit like watching Arsenal sort of 2-3 years ago, where great going forward, but there's a mistake in them at the back, and they can have problems. And that first season with Martinez, we saw Everton were around the top 4, weren't they? And they looked fantastic. But as everyone pointed out now, the back 4 was basically David Moyes' back 4. And in the same way that Wenger inherited the back 4 when he took over at Arsenal, Martinez inherited this defence and basically just left it. And then as soon as that started falling apart, with Distan getting slightly older, Jagielka getting slightly older, he's tried to bring in Funes Mori from River Plate, who was about £9 million, quite an expensive signing. He's slowly taking time, but finding it difficult to adapt. He's very much a Martinez defender if you watch him play. He likes playing out from the back, but as an actual out-and-out defender, I don't know if he's quite cut out for the Premier League. And John Stones, another very good defender, but again, is he quite there at the peak of his prowess at the moment? Perhaps not, but I mean, they should be much higher at the table, Everton, I think. I think they should be pushing for the top 4, and I think they'll be one of those teams looking at Leicester and Spurs and thinking, I mean, are they that much better than us? And I think they'll be really regretting not having a proper crack at the top 4 this year, because on paper, that team is a very, very good side, especially with Lukaku, who I know you'll disagree on this, Kris, but you can't knock his goal record, and I think with Barkley and Deulofeu, yeah, to see them that low down the table is bizarre when you think how good they do actually play a lot of the times.
Yeah, I'm never going to let that. I'm never going to get that Lukaku thing off my back. He's going to
No.
keep scoring just to troll me like Cavani does at PSG.
Yeah.
um, two other clubs I want to look at Premier League wise this week. Danny, I want to talk to you about Southampton. We had Ross as our guest last week, and he was saying about how things were sliding a bit, and there was lots of fraction and friction between the owners and the manager and the fans. It was all starting to go a little bit wonky, and then they turn up yesterday and a James Ward-Prowse inspired victory, 3-0. They get a brand new striker and everything seems fine again. What do you make of them? Do you think that this is? Do you think this is the result to turn their season around, or is it another false dawn?
Well, you would have thought it would have been a smashing Arsenal 4-0 would have been the result to turn their season around. It reinvigorated. It was a Shane Long they had up front that day, and
Yeah.
I don't know how long it is before until Pele is back, but he's one of the most important players, and the massively overhyped Mane, who's had one good game all season, and now he's a £30 million player. And then they got that Jumanji bloke. He's they bought from yet another player where they've paid too much money from. Seems like Premier League clubs think nothing of spending 7, 8, 9, 10 million on a punt on a player. And you got that Rodriguez bloke.
Jay Rodriguez, yeah.
He was meant to be fantastic. He was meant to be the new Messiah, wasn't he? He's played a few games this season. He's played 8, 6 he's come on as sub, but
he had that bad injury, didn't he?
did.
Because he was on the verge of a move. I think it was Spurs. I think were after him, and then he got the injury and hasn't quite got back to the form he showed before it.
But he was very good a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, it's that James Ward-Prowse. He'd only ever got one goal in his career before, and then that free kick he scored was I do love a decent free kick, and his manager is the king of free kicks from back in the day. If you're an England fan, then maybe you're not overly impressed by that. Didn't he score the goal that from? Was it for Holland or was it for Barcelona against Arsenal? Yeah, for Holland. Yeah. Knocked England out, didn't he? When he should have been sent off beforehand. That's it, I remember now.
Yeah, qualifiers.
So he only ever scored one goal before, so he scored the free kick and then he scored a penalty. So he had a really good game, and he's another young player that looks really, really good. They've got some decent ones. Tadic is back with his 5th goal of the season. I think that might have been back-to-back games. Yeah, he did. Yes, 2 goals in the last 2 games now for him. And he's looking good because he was one of their most important players last season. Another one that cost them a lot of money. But yeah, it looks like they shouldn't be in the league where they are, because where are they in the league? They are 10th. Now, like Simon was just saying about Everton, they got to look at Southampton have got to look at the top of that league and think we could probably beat Leicester and Spurs, maybe Man United. We could easily beat West Ham and Stoke were above us, and Liverpool are nothing. So there's a group of about 6, 7, 8 teams there that all, if they just got a decent string of results together, they could make a push for the Champions League, because it looks like Liverpool are not going to make it, because they have one great game, then they have a terrible one, especially with old Firmino shooting from the halfway line over and over again to try and score a goal. Just because he did it once doesn't mean it's going to happen every game. But I've never known a season like this, where it's all so close at the top. The top 3 teams are only separated by 1 point and goal difference.
Yeah, it's really just such a strange league. There's so many teams that are overperforming, underperforming. It's just completely crackers. Simon, speaking of teams that are sort of underperforming or overperforming, which way you're looking at it, Bournemouth, who were promoted into the Premier League at the start of the season, it was kind of a shot that they got there. They're doing enough at the moment. They're winning the games that sort of quote unquote they need to win. They're fairly comfortable in the Premier League at the moment. Do you see? Do you think there's 3 worse teams in them? I.e., do you think they've got enough to stay up?
Yeah, I think they do. I was a bit sceptical at the start of the year when obviously Callum Wilson had that terrible injury, Tyrone Mings had that injury, Max Gradle. Those are 3 big players for them who all got injuries. But we've seen this window. Obviously, they've gone out and got Benik Afobe, gone out and got Lewis Graben, that they're willing to spend money, and the team spirit there. If you compare it to the sides around them, that Bournemouth team spirit does look fantastic. And at home, I think they've shown that they are a match for anyone. Obviously they beat Manchester United there in that win. And if you look below them, teams worse than them. I think Villa are probably gone. I think Norwich will go, and Swansea, I reckon, would be the bottom 3. I think Newcastle have got enough good players, and I think Sunderland have probably got the best manager out of the lot down there to keep them up. So And the nice thing about Bournemouth as well is that they haven't, changed the way they've played at all. They're a bit like when Swansea came up, and they said, we're not going to stop playing the way we are, because Eddie Howe did get under some stick at the start of the season, saying they were too open and things like that. But they've stuck by his guns, and they are a very, very good football side. I remember going to watch them when they played West Brom at the Hawthorns, and they were absolutely fantastic. Played them off the park, and there was quite a contrast seeing Pulis versus Eddie Howe. But I think they'll just about stay up and get enough. And certainly, if Afobe can fire in some goals, they should be all right.
Yeah, his debut goal was a cracker. Just the movement and the timing of the cross, just everything about it was a delightful goal. So, good luck to him. And it's nice to see a sort of quote unquote smaller side doing so well, even if they have got quite a lot of money. I think that has to be pointed out.
If they get relegated, they are in trouble with the Football League because of the stuff they got up to get promoted.
Yeah.
One of them, and I think maybe Norwich, and there was one other team that they were saying, but again, look at QPR, they were in trouble and they got away with it. Just chuck them a few quid and they'll leave you alone. But yeah, there's a lot of people in the lower leagues that are disgruntled with the way that they've got away with doing it. I think they spent all the money on the players rather than the ground, and they had to meet certain things, and they overpaid in bonuses. It's just from what I've read and what I've heard.
It's difficult with Bournemouth, because obviously it was that sort of fairy tale story of the fact that they were so down there, almost going out of the Football League, and Eddie Howe kept them in and they turned it around. But they were obviously bankrolled by a very wealthy owner, and they still are bankrolled by a wealthy owner, and that's why they get under the problems with financial fair play, because the ground only holds 11,000. So in terms of the actual turnover generated from match day revenue and things like that, when you're not in the TV money of the Premier League, you won't comply with financial fair play, certainly from the amount they were spending. But I think if they stay out, they'll be all right. But yeah, 11,000 for a Premier League ground's not the biggest.
No,
I think 6 seasons ago they were just promoted from League Two in 2009-10. That is amazing. That's one of the quickest. I remember years and years ago when Swansea did it.
Yeah.
All the way from Division 4 to Division 1, then back down to Division 4 again. But there's so many teams like Bournemouth and Swansea and Norwich.
Wigan did it all those time ago, didn't they?
Yeah, Wigan are on their way back down again now. They're in the third tier. But yeah, I like the Bournemouth story. And
it's a great away game as well. It's it is a great little ground. It's a great away day, I think. If when Arsenal go there, it'd definitely be worth it. Anyone going there.
Yeah, such a sort of compact and tight ground, and just proper old school, and down in a lovely area of the country as well. So I agree with all that. I want to just touch on this week sort of an area that maybe not all of us are particularly familiar with. I speak there of this thing called the Championship, which I'm sure we have a few people who listen to this that will be a follower of a Championship side. Bit of a crazy weekend this weekend, but there's quite a few stories developing, and I'll ask you guys, as sort of to the best of your knowledge, what you think. Start with Middlesbrough, who are top of the Championship, 55 points from their 26 games. They lost at managerless Bristol City this weekend with a late goal. It's their first goal they conceded in 9 games, astonishingly. Danny, what do you think? I remember the days, as I'm sure you do, when Middlesbrough had sort of the Juninhos, the Ravanellis, the Eversons, and the BT Cellnet, there's a name for the past stadium when it was opened. They struggle to fill the stadium now, but they are regarded as one of the big sides in that part of the world. Do you think it'd be good to see them and Karanka sort of back into the Premier League? And do you think they are the favourites? Although I know they sit top, it's obvious. But do you think they're the favourites for that league?
No, I think Derby are. I know they're now 6 points ahead of Derby. Derby, you'll probably come on to, had a very strange result as well. But I'd had my money on Derby with Paul. Paul Clement, is it?
Yeah.
And they've spent £25 million. They got ex-England international Darren Bent there, and they got a couple of the Austrian bloke from Villa, Wiseman.
Andreas Weimann, yeah.
Oh, he's decent. He'd do a job for most Premier League teams, and they have spent an absolute fortune, like the 25 million. There's some Premier League teams that haven't spent 25 million, so it's mainly Derby and Middlesbrough that have spent all the money in that league. Hull have retained the vast majority of their players. Some of them must be on massive wages, like Tom Huddleston and the other one that is ex-Spurs.
Livermore.
That's it. So they've retained most of their players, and then you got other ones like Ipswich that are always there or thereabouts. Sheffield Wednesday making a big push for it. Yeah, but for Middlesbrough to go and lose, I mean, they fired their after getting a draw in the FA Cup, and they got the replay coming up. You'd have thought that's a terrible time to sack your manager. I mean, in that league, Bolton are already down. Bolton are long gone because they're £173 million in, well, probably £180 million in debt now with the interest they made occurred in the last week. Charlton, they're in absolute pieces. I do actually take notice of the Championship because my boys Peterborough used to be there, and it's a really interesting league. Personally, I think that league should have more on TV. I know over Christmas they had 10 games in 10 days, but it's a very underrated league, and there's so many teams that are doing well. So many, I mean, you count how many of those teams that were considered huge teams, like Nottingham Forest, back-to-back European Cup winners, and QPR, mainstays of the Premier League for many years, and spent an absolute fortune over the last few years. And Leeds United, Blackburn, previous Premier League winners, as well as Leeds. Or did Leeds win it? Or was that the last season as Division 1 they won?
Division 1 last season, yeah.
Yeah, so much interesting stuff to go on there. But personally, my money, still keep your eye on Derby because there's another 13 days left or 15 days left because it's the 1st of February for the for the transfer window. So some of those teams are going to start spending big because there is such a wonderful, lovely, cuddly pot of money in the Premier League. If you can get there, nom nom nom, we all love the money.
Oh, just a bit. Speaking of money, Simon, you got a fun fact on Derby County, or a touch on. As Danny said, they did lose surprisingly at Birmingham City, or home to Birmingham City yesterday, and like he also said, they're under a bit of pressure really to perform with the money they've spent. But their owner has quite a unique income. Am I right saying?
Yeah, well, he's an entrepreneur, a guy called Mel Morris. But one of his many companies that he backs is Candy Crush. So quite a lucrative proposition for him. It's worth about £500,000 a day it makes. So
wow.
For anyone who plays the app, he's the main backer of it at the moment. So profiteering for Derby's transfer kitty, which is, as Danny said, certainly in the summer. I mean, they spent £20 million on likes of Bradley Johnson, who was playing for Norwich. And they went big, and that was 20 million net spend as well, So I mean, they really did go for it. And getting Paul Clement in as well was I know he was an assistant, but he was still at the biggest club in the world. So they are one of the teams that I think will go for it. And outside of that, I mean, Burnley under Sean Dyche have been, as everyone expected, I think, typically stable, and the same with Hull under Steve Bruce, steady pair of hands, and they've been great as well. And then the one I would look out for, who I mean, every year you seem to look out for them, is Ipswich. I mean, Mick McCarthy spends absolutely nothing there. Hundreds of thousands probably on transfers, and he gets
their best player in the summer,
as they always do, and that money, he doesn't spend it, will go back in the infrastructure. They've got a great youth set up there. And I look at someone like Mick McCarthy, and I think, not having a go at Remy Gard or anything like that, but when that Villa job comes up, if you want to, someone to steady the ship and try and keep them up, I think he would be a great choice for a Premier League job. But he seems to be not anyone's flavour of the month at the moment. But they'd be a great outside bet for the playoffs, I think, if anyone fancied a punt. And I think Wolves will probably be out of it now, losing Benik Afobe. And Brighton slightly going down, but Sheffield Wednesday as well, who seem to have picked it up after a fair few years of uncertainty. They've been backed financially anyway, and signing Forestieri in the summer seems to have been the big one for them. Who was any Watford fan will know he was a big favourite there, but he wasn't wanted anymore at Vicarage Road after they got promoted. But he's been great for them. So
yeah,
and they got that young Portuguese bloke as well, who's
I wanted to touch on Sheffield Wednesday. Marco Matthias is the chap you mentioned there, and a quick plug for my interview with big Sheffield Wednesday fan Natalie Dean, which is available now if you haven't listened to it. But she was saying that since Stuart Gray left, it was a bit of a shock that he sacked Stuart Gray at the time, and they've changed their whole sort of ethos, their whole philosophy. Foreign manager, a lot of foreign players, 6 wins out of 7. They are, as you say, you look for teams that are making a bit of a run. They're now sitting on at 45 points, just inside the playoffs. And when you think that in third, Derby County, you've only got 49 points on the same games played, Sheffield Wednesday, for me, are that side. I wonder if their run is coming too early. I don't, that's certainly a reason for debate with that. But you're quite a historian, Danny. It's one of the famous old grounds, Hillsborough, for a variety of reasons. They're another one of the clubs that you said, a bit of a sleeping giant. Many sort of famous games in the Premier League era, sort of the David Hurst and the Carlton Palmer era. Do you think it'd be nice to see a club like Sheffield Wednesday back, and particularly for that part of the country, location-wise?
Yeah, I do think that you got the three northeast teams and you got the two teams from Sheffield, and that none of them are really doing very well at the moment. It seems like they used to be powerhouses of British football. It wasn't that long ago that Sheffield Wednesday were playing in Europe, and they lost to Arsenal in both the cup finals. And yeah, they've got a massive big stadium. They're just a really big team, and they've been dipping in and out of like from the second to the third tier, then back again. Same as Sheffield United. But they've had the size of their stadium now is only 24,000. That used to be best part of 40,000. It's a really interesting place. But I think the main thing that Sheffield Wednesday got worried about is the loan of what's his name, Gary Hooper, the Norwich City striker. I'm just reading here that where is it? Yeah, he goes back to Norwich. His loan ends on the 16th of January, which was yesterday. And at the moment, he's got 6 goals in 12 games. So that's probably helped them on their run. So I don't think he's ever going to cut it in the Premier League for Norwich, although he did cost them a hell of a lot of money when they've got him from Celtic. But if they can maybe negotiate to get him there, the loan extended, which happens all the time, then yeah, they could make a push for it, and it would be good to see that part of the country have a Premier League team again, because it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. It really has. Chatting to Nat about whether she thought there was enough opportunity of the Sheffield derby again. Her exact quote was, "Can only really see it if Sheffield Wednesday don't go up and Sheffield United do," because she just thinks that it's a mile apart between the two sides. So do check out that interview. It's very, very insightful for a variety of reasons. Just sort of drawing a line to the Championship before we look at some listener questions. Simon, what do you make of the situation between two clubs of probably similar size? Again, both former Premier League sides, Bolton Wanderers and Charlton Athletic. I mean, they're two sides that are in all sorts of trouble. Bolton at bottom, Charlton second bottom, both under different sort of issues, one financial and one managerially or business owner wise. What on earth is it gonna take to fix both of those sides? And what do you think both are doomed? Do you think there's any hope for either, even if they do get one of their issues sorted out?
Yeah, I mean, they're both very difficult situations and almost sort of cautionary tales for clubs falling out of the Premier League of what can happen if if you don't bounce back. I mean, as for Bolton, the debt is, I think it's over £100 million. They're trying to get the administrators in to clear the books basically and start over again. And I think they will be all right. I think Neil Lennon seems to be giving the impression that he will stick around with them, and they're basically going to have to start all over again in the same sort of way that Portsmouth did and other sides. And they're trying to sell players to raise money. I know they had an issue the other day where Mark Davies, a midfielder there, looked like he was going to Sheffield Wednesday, I think it was, and he sort of missed 2 games trying to sort out a deal and ended up coming back to the club and it hadn't gone through, and stuff like that sort of sums up the mess and difficulty they're going on when they think they sold a player, a bit of money out the door, and the deal falls through. And as for Charlton, for anyone who doesn't know, it's quite an interesting business model as it was described to me once. It's basically a shit Watford. So, in the same way the Pozzos have a sort of monopoly of 3 or 4 clubs. I think his name is Duchelat, the Belgian man. He used to own Standard Liège and a couple of other clubs, and basically the players would rotate around the different places, and the same with the management. They would almost lose their job in one job and move to the other, and it's basically become, from what it was under Kerbishley's management, a very stable Premier League club, it's basically become somewhat of a mess. And there was the protests outside the Valley the other week. Around Christmas time, there was an interview with Katrine Mayer, who's the chief executive there, who I think her exact quote was, might be slightly wrong on this, but basically was sort of saying, I don't understand why the fans are complaining. When you're in a restaurant and you don't like something, you just get on with it and you see it through. So I don't think they quite understand that fans aren't customers. And that situation, obviously, they've thumped again at the weekend. I think the more worrying one, for me, is Charlton. I know Bolton have got that big debt and the winding up order coming in, but for Charlton, unless the ownership changes, then it won't be any different. The club will be run the same way. And it's a shame, certainly, for Charlton, because I think as anyone who knows, certainly during the 90s, them getting promoted and then under Kerbishley, and you think back now and you think of fans complaining, going, oh, God, we're 8th, we should be getting top 4 and all this sort of stuff. And they were a very good side. I remember that season, I think it might have been 2004 perhaps, where Scott Parker was absolutely brilliant for sort of 3-4 months, scoring goals, bossing midfield games, and then he got signed by Chelsea to sit on the bench in the January window. And that was when Charlton was sort of top four. And then ever since they tasted that, the fans weren't happy with mid-table. But you see where they are now, and it is a shame. And whether that ownership changes in the near future, I personally can't really see it. But
No.
Wasn't one of the managers an ex-scout of his?
yeah, well, he sort of has this weird thing where if someone loses their job, they sort of say, "Oh, you'll stay within the business almost, and we'll find you a job at another club." Or
As manager?
as manager, yeah. But I mean, it's a bizarre way of running it, and I think the definition of a shit Watford is a good example. Really, that's basically what it is. So
Yeah, I still remember actually being at the old Highbury, and Danny, you might remember this when Klaus Jensen chipped Richard Wright. It's an outstanding goal. And back in the days when they had like the likes of Sean Bartlett and, as you say, Scott Parker and Konchesky, they were a really good side under Coventry, and that was, as you say, only 10 years or so ago. So it's quite scary how things can change so rapidly. It's a shame, especially for a fairly family club. I think I'm right in saying, quite a local support and whatnot. So we wish them the best. I think it's fair to say. Danny, it wouldn't be right not to have a quick update on Peterborough. So I'll let you go for gold, but they're just inside the playoffs. They cost me a significant amount of money yesterday, so I'm not particularly chuffed about them right now. Missing a 96-minute penalty. That's all I needed for a fairly nice wedge. Never mind. Don't gamble, kids. It was a 0-0 draw home to Southend, who are also pushing for the playoffs. Do you think they're good enough? I mean, they are 7 points behind Wigan, the place above them. So there's only one place really to fight for as far as playoffs go. With a game in hand, fair point. Do you think they've got enough?
Oh, they'll be in the playoffs definitely, because they are just like the Peterborough of old. It's all out attack. It's goals, goals, goals. Apart from when you put money on it, then there's no goals.
Thank you.
But their best young player is Connor Washington, and I just found out the other day that a mate of mine, he used to, in a village near me called St Ives, they've got a really rich owner, and he was playing for St Ives. He scored 57 goals in 52 games, and then they sold him to Newport, and then when Newport sold him to Peterborough for $500,000, that paid for St Ives' wonderful training ground. And so my mate Lee, dirty Tottenham fan, he said I used to actually play with Connor Washington when he was playing for 6-a-side or 5-a-side, however many aside it was at the time. But West Ham have got a young bloke called Samuelson who's on loan at Peterborough at the moment, and he's one of the most instrumental players in the side. He's mainly sort of midfielder. He scored a couple of goals already this season. But yeah, Peterborough will go up because the amount of goals they score. But it all depends on whether Washington gets sold or not, because at the moment he's got, just looking, 10 in 25 last season. You've got 13 in 40, and he's getting better and better. And the more attacking football they play, the better it seems to be. Because they've had trouble with goalkeepers over the last few years, where we spent an absolute fortune on one from Norwich, who I think now is kicking his heels at Cardiff. And they've got some really good players there, and they should go up. They will be in the playoffs, and if anybody gets them in the playoffs and then they just carry on playing the way they have played, I mean, they could even get promoted, but it would be a disaster if they did get promoted, because they're not ready for the Championship. How the hell they managed to stay 3 seasons in the Championship last time they went up was a miracle. But they're fun to watch, and I shall be going as soon as this defrosts around here. I'm going to go and watch them play in the sun for the one day it'll be sunny there.
Yeah, right in May, that kind of thing.
Usually is.
Is it still Darren McAnthony? Is he still?
Yeah, Dara. Yeah, he's
Dara.
a Northern Irish businessman. We thought when he first took over that he was going to buy it and move the club, which he tried to do down where the brick makers are, a little bit further down towards Yaxley. And there was rumours that they were going to go there, but now they've not. We had quite a nice Thomas Cook stand, which is where the home fans stand, and then to the right of that you've got the away stand, which is looks like a cowshed, and they've knocked that down and extended that and got rid of the car park behind it. So now they've got 2 really decent stands, and they'll just continue to redevelop the whole ground. But they should have a massive crowd. I mean, I'm just looking now, there's only 7,000 there, but weren't that long ago that their stadium would hold about 20,000, and I was there for, actually missed Arsenal-Liverpool in the FA Cup a few years back to go to Peterborough-Newcastle in the FA Cup. It was a great game. We lost, but Arsenal won. And so it's a nice club with decent players, but they they do tend to go and buy all these non-league players, keep them for a year or year and a half, and then flog them on for 10 million. Like we're saying, Simon was saying about Dwight Gale. That's another one, ex-Arsenal youth product. Went all the way down back through the leagues. Then Peterborough bought him and then sold him on for about £7.5 million. I think they paid about £500,000 for him, and then you got Britt Amasonga Bonga, who went to Nottingham Forest, and then they decided we're not paying for him, so got a transfer ban for that, and now he's injured for the whole season. So we've had some really decent young strikers coming through that everyone else keeps stealing. So maybe if a few of them stayed at the club, like back in the day, Spurs bought a couple, and then Tomlin was another decent one who's recently gone. I could go on for ages about them, but yeah, it's just nice. It's proper lower league football, and it's not all kick and rush either.
No,
Lots of lovely goals.
It's a good teams down there. It's a good managers, and that's always highlighted during the FA Cup period of time, isn't it? With the Exeter
Peterborough still in it.
Yeah,
they've got the winner of Bristol City West Brom.
And I wonder if, with the success of someone like a Dele Alli, for example, I wonder if more Premier League clubs might take a bit of a gamble. Or Vardy, of course, might take a gamble.
Dons, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Although it was only one level down, but he was a star in League One as well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with them. So I'm sure we'll keep us posted. Let's finish with some questions then. We've had a couple sent in. There's 3 from one person, so I'll try my best to get through those as well as the other couple we've got. I know. Right, first one then. I'm going to give this one to Simon. How overrated is the Championship when clubs want to send youth players on loan? So I think he's talking about the Premier League as opposed to... He might be talking about the Championship, but make of that what you will.
Yeah.
That's Janzeb Shaheen, by the way.
I can see what his point is saying is, do we really learn, or do the players really gain anything from a Premier League player going and playing in the Championship? I guess the example you'd look at is someone like Patrick Bamford, who tore it up for Middlesbrough, was voted best player in the Championship last season. He's come to Palace and he's not played, and that gives off the impression, that he can't necessarily cut it at this level. But I think the difficulty is for clubs is the alternative is playing in the under-21s. And as Wenger has spoken about, he's perhaps one of the best managers when he talks about it. He's spoken about it before, and he basically says, with English football, they're getting almost a lost generation of players. So from sort of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, everything's fine, developing all right in the academies. And then you get to 18 to 21, you've got a batch of players who basically aren't playing competitive football. And the under-21s isn't competitive enough because, it doesn't matter if you lose, really. It doesn't matter if you're not really in the team. There's no real coverage of it. You don't get the build-up in the week of the media talking about it. You won't get the onslaught as if you lose. And you contrast, say, someone coming through Arsenal's academy, playing all the way sort of under-21 football. Try and think of an example. Someone sort of like Iwobi, but not necessarily of that sort of same sort of ilk. But someone like that, Dan Crowley. And you contrast that with someone like Dele Alli, who's the sort of same age as around those sort of players. And Dele Alli's got almost, 100 caps playing in League One, where he's been sort of fighting for promotion, sometimes with MK Dons fighting to stay up, getting them up promoted. And the contrast they'll have, I think, as a player, not necessarily in their ability, but also mentally, I think their strength, I think it makes such a difference. I think that's why clubs try to send them to the Championship rather than, because the alternative is they play youth football, which doesn't matter. Whereas someone like Patrick Bamford all last season, the experience he'll have gained from helping Middlesbrough gain promotion is massive.
So the season as well.
He was the league's player of the season. And I think that's why they do it and send them lower down, because as Wenger says, and other managers would highlight as well, I'm sure, the alternative is they play under 21s football and it doesn't matter and it doesn't mean anything. So you need to get them lower down the leagues and playing where they'll have a manager who'll bollock them, they'll have the press who'll slate them, they'll have fans who'll have a go at them, because otherwise it's almost like being wrapped in cotton wool and they'll never learn, they'll never develop. So I can understand the point, but I think there is no alternative, and it's the best way for players still to really earn their stripes and cut their teeth.
Yeah, so it's a very good question, actually, when you break it down like that. It's a really good question. One of our regular listeners there, Janzeb, so thank you for that. And I won't congratulate him. He's just got into French football because of me, and he's decided to support my team's direct rivals, so I won't be endorsing that decision.
Who's that?
Nantes. One of Lorient's.
Mo Johnson's old team.
Yes.
Playing yellow and green.
80s, wasn't it? 80s,
Yes.
70s.
Are they any good now? Because they used to be quite a big side, didn't they?
They're
Of course, he's not going to say they're good. They're rivals.
they're mid-table. I mean, they're
They're
rebuilding.
mad.
They only came up a couple of years back, and they're rebuilding the
I
structure.
remember them being a massive club, sort of.
Yeah, they're one of
Champions
France's
League and
one of France's sleeping giants. But as are everybody, as PSG are 23 points clear at the top. So yeah, less said the better. Right. Another question. Per Svensson, the first of his 3 questions. I'll give to you, Danny.
Per.
Yeah. He said, "Is the Premier League good or bad when anybody can win against anybody this season?" Good question.
Got to be good, isn't it? Unless you support the team that lose, it's going to be good. It's going to be interesting. And if you go to, like you just said, in Ligue 1 in France, PSG just running away with it, and then in Spain, it was hiccuped then. That was a silent hiccup. In Spain, it's going to be Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, really. Other than that, you're not going to get anything. And then in Germany, another bore fest as Bayern run away with it. Would you really want that when you know that Bayern and Dortmund are going to win most of their games most weeks? And then teams like Borussia Mönchengladbach are going to go and win 5, lose 5, win 5, lose 5. It just gets all a little bit too predictable. But as long as it's your team that isn't the one that's lost in the Premier League, everyone loves it. I mean, for me, it's been the most interesting season at all. I mean, the fact that Villa, Sunderland, Newcastle are now all on a run, and I think they can catch all the teams above them, like Simon said earlier. I think Norwich will go down, and I think Swansea will go down. I mean, who sacks their manager and gets an interim manager who has no idea, and then sells one of your best players to one of your relegation rivals? So, if that happened in a comic, you would think that's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So it's just such an interesting league at all points of it, promotion, relegation, not promotion is it? Champions League, relegation, UEFA Cup, all of that stuff is brilliant. And chuck the FA Cup in there as well, just for the mix. Wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. And Swansea, of course, play Watford tomorrow. We'll cover that in tomorrow's pod. So that's a massive game for them. Must win, really, I think, given their situation, especially with Newcastle winning yesterday. Another question from Per, which I'll give to you, Simon. This is an Arsenal-related question. What happened to Arsenal's passing skills that we're so famous for? So obviously, Per's a gooner. Today was a good day to highlight it. Really, lots of misplaced passes.
yeah, I mean, I don't think Arsenal have lost that sort of style of play that they obviously still want to play like that. I think the difference is more from the way teams defend and play. I think you get a lot more teams who've taken this sort of in vogue style of pressing quite high, and certainly likes to look at Crystal Palace and teams like that who like to press high and steal the ball. Liverpool obviously being a prime example. I think this week, any Arsenal fan looking at those 2 games, I mean, Liverpool were always going to press them high at the pitch, and that's Jurgen Klopp's forte. And Stoke City, despite these change in style, they're still one of the most physical teams to go. And the Britannia, on days like this, the elements there are pretty formidable with the wind whipping through it and the cold, of course. So I don't think Arsenal have lost it so much as just the difficulty of being able to play that way and the standard of the Premier League makes it harder to do it.
Yeah, I think that's and the pitch thing today, particularly the pitch doesn't help and the conditions don't help, and if teams work you out, they don't really want you to play in a certain way, then they will do everything they can to stop you. So it's not always one-sided on that argument.
The Liverpool game was an all-time low. I mean, I'm just looking at Newcastle. We went to Newcastle and beat them 1-0. Newcastle 0, Arsenal 1. Arsenal had 713 completed passes out of 778. Then you go and have a look at them against Liverpool this midweek, 271 out of 378. So like Per says, it's just been shocking. I think a lot of that is down to Santi Cazorla not playing because he just get 1,000 passes a game on his own. But the number of passes has been... I mean, a lot of it's to do with the weather. There's no point kicking it along the floor if you're knee-high in mud, is there?
No, definitely not. Yeah, speaking as Sunday League manager, I can sympathise with that. Another final question from Per, and then I've got one more for Simon. Per's final question was, how bad do referees need help with video in decision-making? So we've seen a lot of incidents recently, and in particular, there was the issue with Chelsea yesterday about the time added on, about the offside. There was the game in midweek where Sam Allardyce and the new Swansea boss, whose name escapes me, what's his name?
Alan Curtis.
That's the badger. He obviously wasn't happy with quite a few decisions in that game. Danny, as a sort of an old school fan, would you welcome technology for some decisions, or
God,
no, you're more of the old school?
the Swansea game from midweek where they had someone ruled offside when he wasn't. They had a goal ruled offside when it wasn't, and then that one where it come back over the goalie, tipped it onto the bar, and then it went back out again. I don't know why that wasn't allowed as a goal, because the goalie was the last person to touch it, and then he just went up and put it in. And they went, no, not allowed. So that's just probably a side of offside that I didn't realise, because that very rarely happens. But at the moment I'm watching the Pittsburgh Steelers v the Denver Broncos, and bit of play, stop, let's have a look at the video. Bit of play, stop, let's have a look at the video. It takes like the FA Cup, people gone about the romance. It takes the romance out of football. I don't want to see it being a clinical sport like that, where every single thing is scrutinised and go, nope, this happened, that happened. Some of the times, if it goes for you, you cheer and laugh at the other team, and if it doesn't go, you think, well, for you, then you think, well, never mind, better luck next time. I don't like the sport being changed. What I would have, though, is maybe a second referee running around on the pitch.
Two referees.
Yeah, well, why not? Well, then, or actually, I've always wondered why you didn't have 4 linesmen.
Yeah,
two on each side.
half. Yeah. Probably because they don't want to pay for it. That's probably why.
Yeah, you get about $1,000 a game.
I think it's mad not having video technology in football. I think it's the only sport which doesn't have it, which just seems absolutely crazy. I think cricket, tennis, rugby, athletics, I mean, everything else has it. And I just think it's bonkers how football doesn't have it. I think
I'd have
when
it
it's there.
Goals, though, haven't we? The goal line technology, and that's not
Yeah, I mean,
much.
but even the Champions League. I mean, Platini. Well, not that Platini's going to have much say on anything, but even Platini doesn't want that in there. I mean, I understand it, that you don't want to make it so stop-start, but when it's there, there's got to be a way to surely use it. I think.
Yeah.
For offsides, at least. I think offsides.
Yeah, I was going to say, even if you have it just for the major decisions, like an offside,
for offsides and fouls in the penalty box.
Yeah. Because there are
undeliberate handballs where, like, there's been a couple at the weekend where it's ball to hand, not the other way around.
Oh, that
Lancashire was moaning about it, saying, how can that be handball? He wasn't even looking at the ball. I think it was Newcastle, maybe.
Needs clarification.
I mean, the goal line technology has been superb, hasn't it? I mean, that's been been brilliant, isn't it?
For example, the goal yesterday that Okazaki scored, I think a season ago, he probably doesn't get that. And I think was it recently Ben Watson who sort of tried to score direct from a corner against Spurs, and I think he said that had technology not been around, he might have got that goal.
I mean, that was about a hairline not over the line, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we saw another. Was it West Ham that recently, earlier on in the season, where they had it was literally just the tiniest inch on the line. It wasn't given. So. Yeah, I agree.
Look at like that time that Man United had that, where it was halfway in the Stretford end, and it's
Pedro Mendes over.
Oh yes.
Pedro Mendes with Roy Carroll in goal, and
wow.
My favourite thing about it is when it goes in, and you see all the players sort of protesting, and then they realise, oh wait, we can't. It's just definitely like so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Final 2 questions. Danny, just a quick answer for you on this one, because I forgot I had this other question. It was kind of linked to what Per said, but Pete Gooner at the PA Gooner, he also said, is it the weakest Premier League we've ever had, or how hard is it or how hard is it to win, or is there no easy games? So is it kind of a bad league? Is it the weakest Premier League, or is it just the fact other teams have got better?
I think a lot of it is to do with injuries, because there's such highly trained athletes now that Man City have regularly got some of their best 4 missing. Arsenal's 2 best players are going to be Sanchez and Ozil, and Ozil was missing today, and Sanchez has been missing for a few months. All the best teams seem to have their best players getting injured, because it's just happening everywhere. And so that's when the little teams have got all their players on a similar kind of level. One goes out, another one comes in, and then it kind of levels it all out. But I've never known a season where you've had so many of your best players just constantly injured. I mean, how often has Aguero been injured for the last 2 seasons? Plays a few games, misses a few games. Yaya's constantly injured. Rooney, his wig has gone grey and looked like that was going to come off, so he didn't look too happy about that. So when I was watching the Man United game, they kept focusing on the back of his head. Did anyone notice that?
Yeah.
And it looked like it was grey. It was glinting grey in the light. So I don't know what's going on there, but I kept looking at it. It was freaking me out. That was the Newcastle game, 3-3.
I actually chuckled today when the co-commentator for, I think it was Smudger actually, Alan Smith, and he said, the service Rooney's getting, he'll be tearing his hair out. And I was thinking, Christ, that'd be expensive to replace.
Don't take much tearing. But yeah, I think it's a combination of teams who are like Stoke are buying the Shaqiri. Notice I didn't pluralise that, because I hate it when people do that. When I say Shaqiri's, they got Shaqiri, they got Afellay, and all these other teams have got some really decent players that 4 or 5 years ago they'd have only been going to the top teams. But now everybody's got money, So everybody's buying decent players, which I think can only be a good thing, which is why Leicester are at the top. Not necessarily because they're spending all the money on decent players, but those players, a few seasons ago, they'd have been gone by now, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would have
Especially
done.
with a team that had only just been promoted, they'd have gone, well, we'll have those, snap them up like Arsenal did with Alan Smith.
Still
We
might
we
be.
bought
It
him,
has to be said, but
we bought him and loaned him back for the rest of the season.
yeah, I agree. Final question then. I'll give this one to Simon. This is always an interesting one. You might have come across this in work, Simon, but there's a lot of talk about a year or so ago, and it's gone quite recently. But when Garolic wants to know, would you be against the 39th in inverted commas Premier League game actually happening, playing in countries like America, Australia, or China?
Yeah, it was one that came up a few years ago, wasn't it? And I think Richard Scudamore, the head of the Premier League, was the one who was most keen and advocate of it. Personally, I'd just be against it because I think it would take away from the competitiveness and the seriousness of the Premier League having this extra game. And then there'd be all these complaints about, well, who do you get in that extra game? Is it done by a draw? So, I mean, if you're Arsenal and your 39th game is, Bournemouth or whatever, you think, oh, great. Whereas if you're Chelsea and your 39th game is Manchester City, you're like, oh, well, great, we're playing Man City, an extra time. So it's a difficult one. I think it more likely would be having, one of the games played abroad out of the 38 where Arsenal and every team gives up one home game and plays it abroad or something like that. But again, the logistics of that is so difficult to organise that it's just best being left alone, I think, and leave the Premier League the way it is. Because as we've seen this season, it's a great product and it has been a fantastic season, probably one of the best for many years. And if Leicester win it, I think it will be the greatest Premier League season ever, I think, if Leicester win the league. So there's no need to change it. It's not broke, so don't fix it.
How would that work logistically? Would you get points for the 39th game? Would everybody play a 39th?
Everyone would play a 39th game in somewhere like Singapore or America or...
So it'd be 10 extra games around
So,
the world.
yeah, but then your 39th game could be against, whoever, one team for the league. So, I mean, it's just...
Madness.
It's an idea of a money-spinning sort of idea and taking the Premier League's global reach to another level, but...
Like with the European Super Cup, that's always played in, is it Hong Kong? I mean, not is it Hong Kong? Where is it?
The World Club
Japan?
Championship is
Tokyo.
World Cup or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they move it around, don't they? Depending on.
Yeah, maybe do that of our Charity Shield. We tend to take the Charity Shield quite seriously.
That's you almost read my mind there. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Or even the League Cup. Maybe say start it off as maybe incorporating the Scottish teams, like they've talked about many times, and then maybe look at shoving the final somewhere just to make it a bit more.
My views on the League Cup and the fact that it's the only tournament in the world where you can get all the way to the semi-final and then you randomly change it to 2 legs and then it's back to 1 leg for the final, which just makes no sense. When you think about that, it makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. Like somewhere like Spain or whatever, you do 2 legs all the way through. It just seemed weird to get to the semi-final and go, oh wait, it's 2 legs now, and then.
They used to have a cup in this country for the like the League Cup, but it was only for the second-tier English and Scottish teams. I mean, that was back in the 70s.
To save the fixtures, I think the way, because obviously there's the big. I mean, Jurgen Klopp and other managers complain about fixture congestion. Congestion would be just to get rid of the League Cup, I think, and just have the FA Cup. And I think you'd be able to get a winter break in then. I think. Yeah. I mean, do you need 2 cup competitions? I don't know. I know France has 2, doesn't it? And
yeah,
they take the first one seriously though.
But then with the French teams, they only take one of the cups seriously. The other ones, I think there was a cup. I think it was only 2 years ago in the Coupe de France where, I forget who won it. But they
third or fourth tier team, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's 4th tier down, got to the final and lost to a team in Liga. A terrible memory, so I can't remember.
I mean, because I think Premier League teams take the Capital One Cup more seriously now than the FA Cup. Partly because it'll be over by March, so. And you don't need to win that many games. You've got 3rd round, 4th round, quarterfinals, and then 2 semis. So 5 games you're in the final, and you're done by March as well. So I think they actually take that more seriously now, Premier League, than the FA Cup.
Yeah, it's really, really bizarre. It's just how we look at the fixture setup. It was, I think it was Chiavelli, by the way, for memory. I think I may be completely wrong on that, but I'm sure it was Chiavelli. That I think they were an amateur side. And they got to the final, and I'm sure it was Lyon, but I'm sure somebody will correct me.
This happened quite a few times in previous years, where teams in the 3rd and 4th tier French football have got to one of the French Cup finals.
Yeah, I think it's a more regular thing because, so the teams are just so they just look at it as like, really, it's another cup competition. And whereas obviously here it's all. If you look at it a few years ago, the League Cup was where teams rested their first team and played the youth team, whereas now it seems like that's seeping into the FA Cup as well.
Yeah.
And that it's only really when you get to the stage where we're at now, where you've got
2009.
there you go.
They lost 4-0 to Bordeaux.
That's right, Bordeaux. There you go. So, but like you say, it's a regular occurrence for smaller sides, and the only way I can see the cup competitions being worth it is the whole Champions League places. Or maybe you just say, right, League Cup from now on is only Championship and below. Perhaps maybe that's the way you reinvigorate it. But who knows?
Just a quick word on. I know we were talking about Swansea earlier, but I've just seen that something that I'm sure John will bring up more tomorrow with his better knowledge of Serie A. But they've apparently appointing Francesco Guidolin, excuse my pronunciation, who former Udinese manager, to work as head coach, and Alan Curtis will become assistant again. So
Guidolin at Swansea.
Apparently, this is what is the case. So
there you go. So by the time this comes out, that could be a scoop.
Could be
breaking news.
So I mean, that'll be. I'm sure John will know a bit more about. Well, you might know more about him, Kris, anyway. But
yeah, it's a quite a. I say it's quite a high profile appointment if they get him. It's definitely better than Bielsa at this stage of the season. As fun as Bielsa would be, and he really would be fun.
Yeah, he would be great, wouldn't he? But
at this stage of the season, I think that's Guidolin is probably a more safe pair of hands. So we'll keep an eye on that one.
Just having a quick look, in 2012 in the Coupe de France, Lyon beat third division US Quevelli.
That's who I'm thinking of, I think, yes.
And then in 2009, Queen Camp of Ligue 2 beats Rennes.
Yeah, Gang got their league, their Liga now, but yeah, at the time they were Ligue 2, yeah.
In fact, there was another one in 2000 where Calais got to the final and lost to Nantes. So there's been quite a few of them over the years. Second, third, fourth tiers. Never happened in this country, would it?
No.
For the FA Cup or the League Cup. Well, not many non-league teams are going to get through to the League Cup final, are they?
No.
Be impressive, but
yeah, it really would. Okay, so we'll draw a line into that this episode for this week. Then I know I've asked Simon very kindly to come back again in the weeks to come. But before you come back again, Simon, do you want to just give your Twitter handle and anything that you're doing, plugging, anything at all that you want to bring up?
My Twitter handle is at @SR_Collings, COLLINGS, and just a plug for all the work that the guys do on the Bergie blogs, which any of your Arsenal fans is loads of great content produced by the guys. I know there'll be some stuff going up this week. I think Jake and Drew are getting some stuff in the bag, and that's at the Bergie blogs on Twitter, and it is one of the best bloggers around, I think, and it's just worth a follow and good stuff. Even if you're not an Arsenal fan, it is all good stuff. So.
And I heard a little whisper that your last blog got record views, other than Goonaholic, but he's not a regular blogger for us, so yours broke the record.
Yeah, I need to stop clicking on it. That's the problem, isn't it?
No, it's individual clicks. So if you'd have clicked 10 times a day, it'd only count as one.
Oh, there we go.
What a waste of an hour that was.
Yeah, that's worth a quick read, but don't spend too long on it.
Yeah, like you say, it's
Mr. Mesut, wasn't it?
Mr. Mesut, yeah.
Even as you say, even non-Arsenal fans, I think, and some of the work is very, very well researched and very well put together. So, yes, definitely give that a look. Danny, you'll be back with me this time next week,
unless I die of old age or freeze to death.
We can't but hope neither of those happen.
It's freezing cold, and I've had enough.
More than anything else, it'd be a nightmare for me to find a replacement. So,
pressing record is really hard.
Well, yeah, there is that. But yeah, she'll be back next week. I don't know who the guest is next week. It might be, we might have another debutant, or we might have somebody from before. You just never know, so keep it locked. But yes, thank you both very much for joining me. Thank you for giving up your time on a Sunday evening, Simon.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. I'm sure you will return. And Danny, thank you as usual for joining me and twiddling some knobs.
Oh, the pleasure was all yours. I mean, mine.
Indeed. And we'll return with our usual pod, which will be recorded tomorrow. So get us your questions in now. If you've got any questions for anything on French, Spanish, German or Italian football, all the usual crew will be back tomorrow. And you can follow us at the FH Podcast. And as I say, do check out our latest blogs. One might be even going up from me this week. Who knew that, eh? I can write. It's amazing. And of course, our interviews, all of which are excellent as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. Enjoy your breakfast, whether it be late or early, and we will speak to you on the pod.